If you're a wildlife photographer with an R6 Mark II who has been baffled by the autofocus menu, this video is for you. When I started out on the R6 II, I didn't expect it to be as different as it is. The autofocus is much more customizable than what most people are used to, especially if it's your first mirrorless camera or if you're coming from the R6. I'm here to help you by telling you about my autofocus menu setup, how I customize my buttons, which autofocus area modes I use and why, and I'll show you in the field examples to bring it all together. As always, applied specifically to wildlife photography. Hi everyone, I'm Danielle Carstens. I'm a professional wildlife photographer from Africa and I lead photo safaris throughout Africa. I'm in the South Luangwa National Park in Zambia, where we're staying at the beautiful Chikunto Safari Lodge. You'll see from the footage that this is an absolute wildlife wonderland. I love the R6 II, but it does need to be set up properly to prevent you from pulling your hair out in frustration. We like to have options, but options also make it daunting. So let's jump straight in, starting with my autofocus menu. Always in Servo for wildlife. Either my subject or I'm moving, so Servo is the answer. My autofocus area is on spot. Very importantly, whole area tracking is off. This means that the camera doesn't suddenly start tracking something else in the frame, away from where you focused and where you want it to track. I find it distracting and I've found better ways to track a subject that I'll get to shortly. Subject to detect is animals. Eye detection is disabled. I don't want it to be tracking eyes or detecting eyes as a default when I am in spot autofocus. Switching tracked subjects, I'm usually on one, except if I know I'll be photographing something with a lot of interference from other things, like, for example, tracking one bee-eater in a whole flock of bee-eaters. Then I'll switch to 0 for a more sticky focus point. And then I'm always in autofocus. As for cases, I think photographers fret too much about this. Again, it's a matter of what you're photographing. If you're on fast-flying birds, only for the morning, change to case 4. And then for slow-moving subjects, you'll see my case 1 is set to being slightly more sticky at -1 tracking sensitivity, and it's set not to expect too much erratic movement with the accelerate, decelerate tracking set to 0. Canon explains the cases quite well in the menu, but if you're unsure, just use auto or the multi-purpose setting. I haven't made any changes to menu 3. Then menu 4, I do have touch and drag enabled so that I can use my thumb on the screen to reposition the focus point. It doesn't work when it's set for full screen because your nose will move the focus point, and that's why I've set it to top right only. I don't use it often, but it's there if I do need it. I limit the autofocus areas that I can scroll through to the ones that I use, and I find it does save time. My MFN button is my AF area selection control, because this button of mine is assigned to focus, which I'll get to in just a minute. My sensitivity of my autofocus point is +1 because I like it to move fast across the screen. And then the last one of importance to me on here is the orientation linked autofocus point. I love it when my focus point automatically moves to the top area of my vertical composition and back to where I was with my focus point on horizontal composition. I find it saves me some toggling time. Now menu 5's most important setting for me is peaking. But Danielle, you said you always use autofocus. Well, when autofocus starts acting up and the camera struggles to acquire focus, then I switch to manual focus and I use the peaking to help me out. It might not be necessary if you have a prime lens, but with the 100-500, I've learned where its limits lie, and I immediately switch to manual focus and use the peaking without wasting time when I see it struggles to focus. Low light and strong backlight are strong candidates for this method. And on that topic, the important setting on menu 6 is electronic full-time manual focus. This has to be on for you to be able to turn the manual focus ring at any time to override the autofocus. Right, that's the menu. Now let's look at my custom controls. As I said, I use back button focus, so my default autofocus area mode is a single static focus point that doesn't track by itself or detect anything by itself or any of that. I'm in full control of that point's placement, and you always need this option. You'll see here that all three of my back buttons are set to autofocus, but they're all set differently. This one is my default as set up in the camera menu, spot autofocus. My star button is set to activate this block, as well as eye and subject detection inside that block. And my AF on button does the same as my star, but with a slightly larger block. This is by no means how you should set up yours, but it's what works for me at the moment, and maybe you get a few ideas from my setup. I might do another video in the future where I've tweaked my setup a bit to suit me better, who knows. But make sure to subscribe to the channel and remember to click the bell so that you can get notified about future videos that we release. I found this larger and smaller box method really effective in defining an area for the camera in which it can then start subject and eye detection. If there are a lot of distractions that confuse the eye detection, then the smaller block works well. And if you struggle to keep the smaller block on a subject, say it's a fast moving subject, then the larger block is the answer. If you feel like you need to track a subject out of these blocks, then you can either enlarge the block or you can activate or assign whole area tracking as an AF area mode. If the tracking fails completely, then you always have your trusty old spot focus point to fall back on, that you can still select to be any other focus area mode by using your MFN button. This is where the customization comes in. These blocks are flexible zone AF area modes. You'll see it as one of your options when you scroll through. But I've customized the size of those blocks or those zones. So to do that, go into your Q menu, Customize Controls and Customize Buttons. Go to your AF on button and choose metering and AF start. Do you see that info detail set at the bottom left? That's where the magic lies. You'll see you have that option for the AF on button as well as the star, but you don't have it for this button. That's why I've chosen the shortcuts the way I have, because the AF on and the star are then customizable and the other one isn't. Now I have two buttons to customize in terms of tracking. One uncustomizable button to be the good old non-tracking focus point that doesn't need customization and gets moved around manually. When you're in this menu and you press Info, you're able to choose exactly what happens when you press your back button. Most importantly to me, I want to assign a specific AF area mode as well as subject and eye detect. Make sure it's in Servo here, because even if you're in Servo in your main menu, it will be overridden when pressing this back button once you've customized it. Choose Flexible Zone AF1 as your AF area mode for AF on, and then make sure you mirror all of these settings for your star button, but set your AF area mode to Flexible Zone AF2. And then back in your shooting mode, use your MFN button to select your Flexible Zone AF1, press Rate, and then change the size of that block or that zone area. You can do the same for Flexible Zone AF2 and make it a different size. You can make it any size to suit your needs, horizontal or more vertical. Once you're done, make sure you go back to your default AF area mode, in my case spot autofocus. We only want to activate these zones when pressing the two back buttons. It sounds complicated now, but refer back to this video as much as you need to and you'll get the gist of it pretty quickly. Here are a few examples of when I use which autofocus area mode. And that's it, folks. I hope that helps you navigate through the autofocus menu of the R6 II. Please let me know if you have any questions down in the comments, and I'll see you soon. Until then, enjoy your R6 II.